Now, let me put a proposition to you for you to react to. Donald Trump should make tonight about Joe Biden's record in power, inflation, border chaos, taxes, the advance of US enemies, collapsing Democrat run cities. But there's a big risk he won't. He'll make it about himself, stolen election, Jan the 6th rioters, really hostages, crooked Joe. And in the process of doing that, he might just defeat himself. What do you think?
That's certainly a risk. I think a lot of how tonight flows will depend on the questions, depend on the moderators. If the moderators open by asking a question about whether or not the 2020 election was stolen, that will set a tone for the night. If they ask a first question about inflation or government spending or COVID recovery, I think that goes in a different direction. The moderators are not particularly pro-Trump. In fact, they're openly anti-Trump. So be curious to see where they'd like to take the debate. And face it, the people who are tuning in, and you mentioned this, the potential size of the audience, and it is huge. I don't think it'll be the largest event in American television history, but it will possibly rival the Super Bowl. They're really tuning in more for entertainment than they are for information. These are two of the most well-known politicians in the country, perhaps the world. People know where they stand on the issues. I think they're turning in to watch the show. Again, your point is well made. And I think Trump would be better served by staying to the issues because I think he wins on the issues. But if your question is, will he try to make it about himself? The answer is yes. That's what Donald Trump does.
As night follows day, I understand.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, Joe Biden will likely try to goad Donald Trump. And I just wonder if Mr. Trump really, he doesn't have the discipline not to retaliate, does he? He will retaliate.
I don't know if Biden will be to goading him. Again, I think the moderators may do that more than anything else. Joe Biden, however, has said from the very beginning that the country is doing better than people think, and it's up to him to convince them of that. I don't know if you'll see him openly engage Donald Trump on the things like the 2020 election. Joe Biden might try to do what he said he would do if given the opportunity, which is convince people that the economy is better, their opportunities are better, and that the future would be better with him in charge. Again, that would be policy. That would be something that, if you do a textbook of what a debate should look like, that's what it would look like. But maybe Joe Biden's in it for the entertainment as well.
Well, I suspect Mr. Biden will probably refer to Mr. Trump as a convicted felon. And he'll probably do it because it could hurt. Because I've seen some polls that show over 20% of independents are now less likely to vote for Mr. Trump as a result of that conviction. So he's gonna pour salt in the wound, is he not?
I think so, and that there's evidence of that already in some of the television advertisements that have been running.
Yes.
Typically in this country, if I'm running for office, and I've run for office 6 or 8 times, the money I spend on myself, I try to make myself look good, and then I let what we call our third parties attack the other side. That is the playbook here typically. But the ads that are running now on television all around this country are actually sponsored by Joe Biden. At the end of the ad, they have that very familiar "I'm Joe Biden, I approve this message." And they refer to Donald Trump regularly as a convicted felon. So yes, I do expect you're right, and that you will hear Joe Biden use that terminology more than once tonight. I wouldn't read too much. You can read some, and you should read some into that data about 20% of the people being less likely to vote for Donald Trump. That's not the same as saying they won't vote for Donald Trump. You could be less likely to do something and still do it. And we've not seen the overall polling numbers change that much since the convictions were handed down, and certainly not seen Donald Trump lose his support by 20%.
I think they've tightened a little bit, but Mr. Trump's still ahead. He's especially ahead in 5 of the 7 swing states, but he still needs to appeal to swing voters and independents because however you cut it, it's very close. And simply energizing the base, which we know he's very good at, I would suggest that's not enough. He has to reach out to these swing voters and independents. But to do that, he has to talk differently as to how he addresses a Trump rally. And it's not clear to my mind that he can do that.
Yes, maybe, and maybe not. Here's what his message has been ever since he was handed his first indictment over a year ago. His message changed, and his message became this: look at what the government is doing to me. I'm rich, I'm famous, and I'm white. And if they can do this to me, just imagine what they can do to you. Elect me, and I'll make sure that won't happen. That is having tremendous success, especially in some of the minority communities. The polling would indicate that his support amongst the African American community is at historic highs. The polling would also indicate he's pulling almost even with Joe Biden with the Hispanic community. And those are groups that Republicans traditionally do not do as well with in this country. So I hear what you're saying in terms of him having to change his message to reach out to those undecided voters. But the message that he has been delivering for the last several months has been effective up to this time. There's a reason the race is very, very close.
Of course, to buy that message, you have to also buy into the idea that it's all a big conspiracy orchestrated out of the Oval Office by Mr. Biden and the Democratic machinery of government. And some may buy that, but others won't. I want to ask you another question, which is of interest to us. Do you understand why Europeans, including the British, are worried about Mr. Trump? He's got cozy words for our enemies. He's almost got nothing good to say about America's friends on this side of the Atlantic, and he would clearly hang Ukraine out to dry.
Let me give you the other side of that argument. Having been his chief of staff for a year and worked in the administration for nearly 4, I would put it to you that Putin did not invade Crimea under a Republican president. He did not invade Ukraine under a Republican president. Those were both actions taken under Democrat programs. I recognize the fact that Donald Trump's style rubs people wrong, especially European folks. The manner in which he speaks and acts is different. And I wish I had a better word for that as I sit here and talk to you this morning. But the bottom line is at the end of the day, the results of the policies and the results of even his style were probably better than what you're facing right now under the Biden administration. So look, I get the fact that a lot of people don't like him personally. But the policies work. To the extent the policies deal vis-a-vis with our friends across the Atlantic, the attitude there was simply that he doesn't like free riding. They would ask him regularly. You remember these conversations? Oh,
Sure.
would you live up to Article 5 of the NATO agreement? And his question was, well, I don't know. Are you living up to your obligations to spend 2% of your GDP on defense? I think that's a fair conversation to have. You
Sure.
can't expect folks to only live up to part of the agreement.
But most countries are moving towards that now. Some, I mean, the United Kingdom's ahead of that, of the 2%. Poland is way ahead of it. France is now over that too. Trump went further. He said, actually, if you're not spending as much as I think you should, I don't care if Russia invades you. I mean,
Yeah,
you
I
must
don't remember that
understand
quote exactly, but I don't remember that quote exactly.
well, that's pretty much what he said. Anyway, I've got one final question to ask
Sure.
you on this, and that's it confused me. Republicans used to care about the federal deficit and national debt. Actually, some Democrats did too. Mr. Clinton left behind a surplus, only recent president that did. But now both Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden, they spend like drunks on a night out. Neither talk about doing anything of the deficit. When is America going to get real on this?
Unlikely that we will anytime soon. And I'm sad to say that as the former budget director for the federal government, which was my job before the chief of staff. But that being said, conservatives, as myself, fiscal conservatives have been worrying about this publicly for 15 years now. But I do feel like the guy who's standing on the corner holding up a cardboard sign that says the end of the world is nigh, and it hasn't happened yet. So I think what's happened is that a lot of folks in both parties have just decided that spending is okay. Republicans like to spend money as much as the Democrats do. They just like to spend it on different things. But your point is well made. There's an axiom in American politics that things don't get fixed until after they're broken. And my guess is that will be the case with the spending issues.
Well, Ronald Reagan once said to me, "A billion here, a billion there, it soon adds up to real money." Your national debt is now 25 trillion. Never mind billion.
35 trillion, 35 trillion, but what's 10 trillion between friends?
Well, exactly. If you need any money, just come to me. I'll see what I can do. Mick Mulvaney, thank you for joining us here on Times Radio.